And I just, I worked about 18 hours, 20 hours a day and slept the rest of the time. I got up and went back to work.
Do you know how to make this bigger? Do you know how to make this bigger? Like full screen? You want a Mac, dude? I have no idea. Yeah. I don't know how this works. Yeah, Keynote. Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
They're not buying credit. They're doing that on. Yeah. It's a, think of it like a cell, where it's a self-contained food that has all data.
And want to know how things work or how we do stuff, you can ask, but I try to leave it off. So feel free, raise your hand if I don't see you. It's really hard to see from here. Throw a shmoo ball and I'll look for you. Let's do it then. Who am I? Oh, yeah, Keynote works. Mostly started working with networking, like Guy. Then started with security after the worms, like in 2099. Got involved with majorly but networking security. And today I work for Aruba Networks. I'm a systems engineer, and I contribute to the incident response team there. What else? I spoke at some conferences, mostly in Brazil, a couple in Mexico, and Layer 1 last year in Pasadena. I'm part of the networking group for DEF CON, and I did the wireless networks at Black Hat, DEF CON, CCC in Germany, the Computer Chaos Conference, and Shmoocon now, first year here doing Shmoocon. Hopefully it's kind of working at least. And on my spare time I do a security podcast with some fellows in Brazil, and I collect InfoSec certifications because I fly a lot. I tend to read geek stuff on the airplanes. What else? So the idea here, and again, I'm going to lay out like what we do for networks, not only the wireless, but the wired. So if you're a network admin, or if you like networks, or if you plan to do what in theory is a secure network, let's talk about it. If you have any questions, one thing you're gonna see is for each conference it's different. Everything is different, and there are reasons why, and that's what we're gonna be talking about. So let's get to it. How did everything start for me doing security conferences? Was before Black Hat in 2005, Jeff came up to us, Aruba, and said, look, you guys want to do the network? If everything works fine, we're going to talk with you guys later about buying stuff and all that good stuff. So we did it, and it worked. And then it followed, right? Then I did CCC in Germany 2 years ago, Layer 1, Black Hat, DEF CON again, H2, HC, which is a Hackers to Hackers conference in Brazil, small one, and CCC now on December. So why do a conference, and that's not only a security conference, why does it need a network? Well, number one, people can't live without the internet. But most important, usually the wired network, we have a wired network for the speakers. So I'm not going to talk a lot about Shmoocon too, because there's a talk about Shmoocon Labs later on. So I kind of agreed with Ken not to talk too much about it. So wired, and this is mostly for, I took this out from like the DEF CON thing. Speakers, brass, the GUMs, some special projects, like there was this past year at CCC, there was a project called the Sputnik, something with RFID and tracking people, was really cool. So sometimes we provide information or the infrastructure for them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have to live with them. So we allocate a channel for them, I have to get out of the channel. So if they're using channel 11 for their project, I don't step on their soil. And what else? The wall of ship at DEF CON, pretty much before it was a hassle because they had to try to collect everything from a central point. There was no central point. Now with the centralized wireless kind of thing, we mirror a port out of the controller or something upstream, and everything's there. And public servers. At DEF CON, there is one server that lives there. I can't remember which one. I think is the bulletin board one. And at CCC, most of the servers are in location. And the wired network for CCC, they provide some ports for the attendees as well. So if you want to go to CCC and bring your server and do whatever, and they have several ports available. We're going to talk about that. And finally, wireless. Wireless is mostly for the attendees. So people want to get to the network and do stuff, good and bad stuff. So number one, what happens are the challenges. What kind of challenges do we have? Besides putting everything together or being attacked in the middle of the conference or something like that, or something going wrong, things start to go wrong right before everything starts, right? So beginning with logistics, and again, some of the stuff here I'm talking, or most of the stuff that I'm talking here is not specific to the wireless gear. This could be for anything. So, for example, logistics. One piece of equipment for CCC last year, it got on site like at the day they were putting together the network. And we're going to see in a few slides, they pretty much do an ISP in 2-3 days. So it's quite challenging. They had to do some stuff, work some stuff out with FedEx and the vendor to really get the thing there on time, because it's right before Christmas time. So you can imagine how FedEx is busy and how things work, but it worked out. It was one of the main switch or routers that they were using, so it was a really important piece of equipment they were relying on. So that ties up with the gear delivery thing. Installation, physical installation, mostly cabling. Even if you're using wireless, you need the cables to get the access points going. This place is awesome, for example. There are like drops on the walls. We just went to the patch panel. We're powering up the APs with PoE. Piece of cake. Other conferences, you have to crimp cables, pull the cables, and sometimes it's more than 100 meters. What do you do? How do we engineer this? Let's put it this way, or hack it. Physical security, not usually a problem, but you guys walk by the NOC here. There's some value in the equipment that is there for all the vendors. So physical security is really important. Sometimes you don't have it. Sometimes it's a small conference. What do? You put the network on, up, and it's running. End of the day, you take it out, do the same thing next day, because sometimes it's not worth for whomever is throwing the conference to pay for physical security 24 hours a day, or at least at night. Here we have that. Special requests. So once everything's working, you're like, okay, let's just enjoy the conference. No, your cell phone goes off or the radio goes off if you're at DEF CON. We need to do something on the network. This speaker needs something, or this guy wants to try something, or we need another SSID or something like that. For example, that happened today. So we should go see Josh's talk later on. You're going to see what I'm talking about. We always, being a little paranoid, I always think about hardware failures, so redundancy and stuff like that. But sometimes you can't do it, or people don't think about it, or don't plan, or stuff like that. And it's on the conclusions, jumping a little bit ahead. Sometimes what can't go wrong will go wrong. Be sure of it. Like, something is going to happen. And sometimes we ran into known or unknown product limitations. What is that? The box is really being pushed to the limit. So that could be a switch, that could be a router, that could be the wireless gear, could be anything. It happened before also, everything was working fine, or we want to use the same setup we had the year before. Everything's working fine, suddenly HTTP, who here went to Black Hat last year? Okay. It got to the point that we spent a lot of time doing troubleshooting, think this stuff was really bad on our side, and because everything worked fine but HTTP. So it didn't work. If you created an SSH tunnel and put everything through the tunnel, worked fine. After a while, we found out that one of the devices used on the network, they upgraded the firmware a few days before the conference and never tested. So we had to take it out. Talking a little bit about wireless, also this is an ongoing thing, right, during the conference. Interference. When you talk about wireless, especially in a security especially in a security conference, any type of interference that you get, you think it's an attack automatically, right? You think somebody's trying to do something wrong, and usually people are trying to not do something wrong, but to try the tool that the person wrote. If you like, based on that, there's no better place to test this, right? I mean, with so many smart people, so you wanna do that. Or I think Major went to an interesting talk, and he's not here. But during his presentation at CCC 2 years ago, he did a Bluetooth talk, and I knew that was going to happen. So we're in this big, like 500 people, how do you call it? Forgot. Room. And suddenly he's like, "Oh, now you please turn on your Bluetooth. I swear I'm not gonna attack you," and stuff like that. He had 2 antennas, and I said, "Okay, there you go." So I fired up the spectrum analyzer, and indeed, like, the quality of the signal in the room was totally blasted on the 2.4 gigahertz. There's not much you can do about it. Sometimes you have to rely on certain resources. I'm going to talk about that, but sometimes you can do stuff. Sometimes the hotel is really flexible, like here. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you're required, because they're like the Riviera. It's a union hotel, so you can't do anything. You cannot hang an access point. So planning, and that's another thing I'm going to be talking about. You have to tell the guy, put this access point there, and with the antenna facing this side or that side. It's really, because if they want to, and the thing, who went to DEF CON? If you saw the access points, they were all the way up there in the ceiling. So if you want to change something, that's hard. You can't do it. You have to tell them, and this costs money. Sometimes, usually you have some issues overall, but for the attendees, for whomever is using the network, usually it's DHCP. I don't know why there's a jinx there, but DHCP, it doesn't matter where you're running. I can do on my box or do externally. Doesn't matter. Sometimes something happens, DHCP stops working, or DHCP in one case stopped working because there was a port trunking problem between 2 vendors. So you had 2 links, and stuff wasn't doing the right thing, like was going one way, and this switch was expecting the packet to come back on that port. It was coming on the other one. That didn't work. You pulled the cable, everything started working, but after like troubleshooting the DHCP server for a while. When you have an open system WLAN network, there are some things that you just can't do, right? It's not encrypted, you're not authenticating users, and problems are easier to happen than when you use encryption. Encryption doesn't resolve everything, but it's a good help on a WLAN network. And last year, Black Hat and DEF CON and CCC, especially Black Hat, we're going to see on the statistics that I have that after Maynard's talk, nobody wanted to use the network anymore. They shut off their wireless card, they popped the EVDO card, and that's it. And that's another trend that I saw. Like, for the past few years, you see like everybody wants a network, but most of the people, if they live here in the US, they have an EVDO card, why use the network? Like use the EVDO. That's what some people do. Right, Nick? People at the NOC. So you're going to see there are different things. Oh, I didn't include Shmoocon. Ken is going to kill me now. We were busy last night having beer, so forgive me. So Black Hat, we have usually, and these are not like exact numbers, and they vary from year to year, but I try to be the more precise I could here. So Black Hat, 4 people, and Black Hat is everything. So the hotel, okay, I'll talk about the problems later when I do the breakdown per conference. DEF CON, 8 people, 2 leads, 2 people for the infrastructure, 2 people for the wireless, 1 is including me, 2 people for the DEF CON TV network thing. And from last year on, the hotel staff is part of the networking team too. So they're really cool, but that's the thing. You have to plan. You can't ask them like twice the same thing, how the things should be, right? Put that thing that way, and hopefully you're not going to have to change it. Layer 1, I pretty much did by myself. Had one of my trainees, actually, he flew down for the conference. I said, you want to play with this stuff again? Go ahead. So actually he did most of the job. At CCC, there's a lot of people, really broken down into like different specialties kind of thing. There's like the backbone people, the uplink people, and we're going to see why this is broke down in different people. More about the NOC teams, and well, you're pretty much on call during the event. What is during the event? If the event goes on 24 hours a day like CCC, you're pretty much on call 24 hours a day. Network monitoring is cool to show stats later on, but it also helps on troubleshooting. So there's a thing there. Downtime is pretty much unacceptable, and mostly because you take it personally. Like you're at a hacker conference, right? You want to make, at least you want your stuff, whatever you did. I think this is normal, but it's a little bit more unforgiving than some corporate networks sometimes. Troubleshooting for fun and non-profit, that's for sure, right? You're not making any money to do that. I don't think anybody makes money, but can, but that's okay. Right? No, seriously, like as I said, sometimes you have to be a really good network administrator slash a network guy, because it could be an application thing, but like the DHCP problem is not really DHCP, but you have to resolve that really fast. So the more you understand, the more you have an idea of whatever you're doing, the better, right? And of course, you don't get to see too many talks sometimes. Just not because you're having problems all the time, but just because you're paranoid. You're like, is it really working? Or your friends start sending messages on your cell phone say, DHCP is not working. And sometimes they don't know exactly if the problem is the network. So before we step into the wireless network portion of the thing, just an overview of the local area networks. So it goes from a 10 gig backbone at CCC to sometimes a Kyocera box with an EVDO card and a few something connected to it. And both work. I was going to talk about the gigabit port, the wire ports for attendees at CCC. Not last year, but the year before, they had 2,000 GigE ports for the attendees. So you're walking on the hallway, you're like, oh, an Ethernet jack, you connect. That's a 1 gig port for you. Uplinks, it varies. So actually, Black Hat, this is the data that I had for 2 years ago. I think last year we got a 6 meg link. DEF CON last year 6 megs, layer 1 EVDO. CCC, I broke down into both different years. It's a really interesting concept there. 2 years ago, more than 10 gigs of uplink traffic. And last year, about 3 gigs, which is quite a lot. And to put together in like 3 days is crazy because they have their own autonomous system number and they do everything. It's like an ISP, right? And Shmoocon we got from 6 to 8 megs, I think. Okay, 20. So 20 megs at Shmoocon. WLAN stuff, usually when I do it, and this is, again, this works today, cannot work tomorrow, but you have different types of doing things. I'm just laying down here what I did and how it kind of worked. Everything's centralized, so I have a WLAN controller. I have APs and their monitors. So an AP provides service, our monitor does the monitoring of the network or of the wireless network. Here I mostly have just APs because fellow Andy has his company doing the wireless IDS stuff for network chemistry. And we do, depending on the size of the network, it's really cool that we can break like certain areas per VLAN. So you can say that AP belongs to one VLAN, or the users on that AP belong to one VLAN. Other users or certain area, it can be an AP, an area, a floor, depends on the layout. Sometimes we turn on some wireless IDS and IPS. Usually IDS is turned on all the time. IPS depends on whomever is running the conference or whomever is responsible for the infrastructure. Because IPS is the thing, right? Especially on wireless. You can say, take the guy out of the network if he's flooding the network with bad stuff. But it's really easy to clone a MAC address or an IP address. So we had people we had this just to avoid like people throwing bad stuff on the network. But people, oh, I can spoof the MAC address and flood, we're going to DOS that guy. Yeah, you can do that, but instead of paying attention in a talk, if you want to spoof like MAC addresses one by one and knock people off of the network, it's up to you. Location tracking we did at CCC was really fun. Because besides doing just like the rogue detection, sometimes we can do like say, where is this rogue AP more or less located? So we, instead of just killing it or attacking it, the guys from the NOC got really excited and they're like, oh, let's go down and talk to the guy. So like they'd show up, like 3 people say, hey, unplug that from the network. The guy's like, what? So it's really cool. This is mostly, I think, this makes our lives really easier, is when you have some sort of networking or WLAN device that can change channels and power automatically. So that really helps. You don't have to worry about that. You can do with other stuff too. It's just not going to be that easy, but interference between the APs and stuff like that really comes into play. And sometimes you can do some sort of integration with some sort of external services. What could be that? Could be an IDS, IPS kind of thing. So we did some stuff at CCC that would send the traffic to some IDS type of box, and if it was the guy was doing something that we didn't want to, we would put this guy on a special row with much less bandwidth that he had before. Can't see anything. So WLAN attacks, nothing new here. Really not going to spend time, but you have all kinds of things, right? Most what we see is man in the middle. Why? Man in the middle and impersonation and deauth and all that good stuff. Ad hoc networks, I didn't know where to put it, so I put on attacks. But mostly whomever saw Simple talk last year about the hacking the friendly skies, it's pretty much about it, right? So sometimes you see like some random network names and stuff like that. It's the guy's laptop that didn't find the network it was configured to and starts advertising that. I had the rogue, oh no, I had fake APs too. What is a fake AP? Fake AP is, I saw a few yesterday here. People have something running, some AP or some laptop running host AP with the same SSID name to hope that people are going to connect to them and collect some packets or something like that. So this was part that I called statistics, but then I changed to statistics and breakdown. because I'm going to talk not only about stats, but some differences between each one of the conferences. That picture, by the way, was at CCC, and now Keynote is really slow about animation. I should have taken that out. Anyways, 2 years ago, they had so much bandwidth that they were asking people to, where's that? Here, to use more, to use more of the network, to get more bandwidth, because really there was plenty. So okay, let's try to do this. How are we in time? Is it really boring? No questions? You guys sleeping? Okay. So DEF CON 13 still was at the Alexis Park, was the first year that I helped them out. So mostly there's an OpenBSD, a couple OpenBSD firewalls there, and a couple layer 2 switches, just because we need a wired network for speakers, press, and stuff like that. Press really freaks out with like hacker conferences. They're like, I'm not going to wireless anyways. You're like, okay, don't blame you. The WLAN had about 30 access points, and some of them were air monitors as well. We did per area based VLAN stuff. So the Alexis Park was one whole thing, like one floor, and then we said, okay, that part is one VLAN, that other part is another VLAN. Why this? For many reasons, right? The number of attendees is really high. You really don't want to have, if something bad happens, some sort of broadcast storm or something like that, nothing special with wireless in this case, just like any wired infrastructure, you can at least isolate. If you break something, you break one part of the network, not the whole thing. And we had an average number of concurrent users on about 300 people at the same time. And that's the thing, right, about and total users, 2,000 and something. Sometimes people change their MAC addresses, sometimes. So you never know how many really users were using, but it's what the stats we gathered. Are we going to have stats on the thing, Ken, tonight?
They're working on getting it on the wireless network now.
Cool. DEF CON 14, different hotel, different story. We were not so much hands-on. We had to configure everything, as I said, tell the guys, we need this. And it's not like you have a guy that is available to you. You're like, no, you give a stack of access points, all labeled, say this goes there, and you show up 2 hours later, everything's there, which is kind of cool. So the wired side was pretty much the same. So it's one of those things, right? If everything works, don't change it. WLAN we had to change because, like, it's a different hotel, so we had to change everything. We had a fewer APs than the year before. Few less was bad. I did this really okay. Fewer APs than the year before. Place is bigger, but it's totally different. It's totally open. The rooms are open, so we didn't need that many. We did a VLAN breakdown per area or per conference room or break room or CTF room, whatever. Total number of users, again, about the same that the year before. And again, this was right after the wireless driver vulnerability talks at Black Hat, so people were really not using the wireless. Concurrent users, 220, and maximum number of users at the same time was about 515, and it was on the first day until the fire marshal said we were good to go. For the Black Hat network, that's actually a map of the coverage at Black Hat. Great. Keynote skills. So if it skips. Pretty basic thing, the LAN, there's no wired network, mostly it's all WLAN. Total number of users, 1,500, and we skipped the thing again. I'm not going to come back. And I forgot the rest. I have to go back. This sucks. That's when you buy a Mac and you don't know how to use it.
What was the core of CCC?
We're going to get to it. At CCC you asked, right? Not Black Hat. Yeah, we're going to get to it. So, okay, total number of users. And this, I combined like the two Black Hats kind of thing. Not too many people. And again, I really saw like before the talk, before Maynard's talk and Johnny Cash's talk, everybody knocked off of the network. They're like, let's see what these guys have to say before I do anything on this network. Maximum number of users, 350, and traffic in and out, we kind of clocked this around like 70 gig in and 35 gig out, which is interesting when we compare to CCC, and we're gonna see this. Okay, CCC 2 years ago, 10 gig backbone. You want to know the vendor, Terry? 2 years ago was, I think, either Forstan or Foundry, if I'm not mistaken. Last year is the next slide. Was, I want to say Foundry. I could be wrong. Or no, I'm sorry. Last year was Foundry. The year before was HP, but I think some OEM was somebody else. So 2 years ago, 10 gig backbone, 2,000 gig E ports. Everybody was happy. The WLAN was really being used, but you saw lots of people on the wired network. I mean, lots. I don't have that number. I don't know how many ports were used. 35 access points and / air monitors. We had the maximum of 509 users on the box at the same time. And the box that I was using supported 512 users. So I wanted to see 513, but we didn't get there. And the cool thing here is how many people were using the network at night. I wanted to change the firmware that I was using for whatever reason. And 2 o'clock in the morning, I checked, I log in, I was at the hotel, I connect back to the controller, and there were 130 people using the network. I'm like, wow, too bad, go have a beer at the bar, the thing is going to be up in 10 minutes. 23C3, almost the same concept, less gigabit ports available for the attendees, because this changes, right? Usually people don't buy stuff. They rely on sponsors, or the contacts they have, or this guy, he works at this company and he has stuff available. That's usually how things for all the conferences work. So the LAN was pretty much the same, 10 gig backbone, commented about that already. WLAN, there was lots more people on it. We had more access points I forgot to put here, but I also forgot the number. I think it's about 40 access points. CCC is a 3-story thing. It's in a convention center. It's in the middle of the winter. So people, when they get in, they don't want to get out. That's why you have like 100 users in the middle of the night using the network. And this was for the WLAN. Did I have the maximum number on the last slide? I don't want to switch. But it was like about 40 terabytes were downloaded from the internet. So that's a lot of traffic for 4 or 5 days. And this is only for the wireless network, 160 megs in and 31 out. The cool thing about CCC, and I don't know why, I'm a bonehead, I didn't put it here. The traffic out for the entire infrastructure is higher than in. So they have servers, they have all sorts of stuff, they do video streaming, so it's a lot of traffic going out. Shmoocon, we're going to talk about that in a couple hours, I guess. Or Ken is going to talk about that.
No, we're all going to talk about it.
No, you do it. So conclusion, plan ahead of time as much as you can. Hacker conferences, usually you don't plan ahead. And that's part of the fun of it. So you live on caffeine and Red Bull and booze. And what can go wrong will possibly go wrong. And like, yeah, this is like some everybody says that. But truly, like sometimes stuff go wrong. It's not too bad, but sometimes you miss something. I had to have like during DEF CON last year, we had something happen when equipment didn't show up or stuff like that. I had to call my coworkers back in Sunnyvale, say, please, 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 we have this box in the lab. It's not our product. It's something from another vendor. It's a switch router. I need something like that. Can you please overnight that to me? He's like, yeah, no problem. So that's cool when you can rely on stuff like that. You cannot always rely on stuff like that though, but it's good to have access to stuff. Because in Vegas, sometimes you cannot really find lots of networking stuff. The main goal for the whole thing, number one, right? When I say protect the infrastructure, well, make it work, right? Try to get it working. Of course, when you fire up your laptop at a hacker conference, you know, as one of the guys, as Lockheed says, the guy from DEF CON, it's like sharing your hard drive with 5,000 hackers. That's the worst case scenario, but it's possible, right? But sometimes you need to use it. There's no way. And protect the users. What is protect the users? Sometimes the users don't do anything for themselves, but if you can do something to protect, to avoid inter-user communication, although the thing is totally open system and stuff like that, you can try to do something if you have the resources. I think I mentioned this, and again, we're not the only ones who do this. But if you have some wireless gear that changes channels and power settings, that makes your life so much easier. You don't have to go one by one and change it or do stuff like that. And of course, the goal is to make the thing work, right? Why? Well, you're there for a reason. You're not seeing talks for a reason. You're trying to make the stuff work for a reason. And we always, I guess, everybody who works in the NOCs for the conferences, try that. And it's really tiring, by the way. Look at these guys here. They're tired. That's pretty much it. Again, if you have any questions. Terry.
Yeah, what about any of the advanced sort of like application inspection or proxies any of these or other stuff other than just the basic guys kind of doing the stuff less attacks in the network?
So trying to repeat the question, any use of some sort of packet inspection stuff?
Or like, do they use like transparent proxies or any
Or
other
transparent
stuff?
proxies and stuff like that.
Or any other network access control like NAC, rather than just IDS, IPS. What else do they apply to these networks?
No, I think like in terms of like stuff or feature sets that we have on a security conference network, I think Shmoocon is the first one that has pretty much full-blown everything. We used an IDS at CCC, but pretty much to like don't let the guys use BitTorrent. But other than that, usually people they don't care. Yeah, here we have like some good stuff. Go see the talk later. Joe. For the lows. Network for the lows. Aaron.
Any idea of like what percentage of availability you had for overdub time? Like how much downtime did you have, I guess?
Percentage of availability. That's a great question. I can talk about problems, right? When you have problems. Let me try to break this down by conference. First, DEF CON 13, we had a power outage for about, I think, 2 hours. So, well, we couldn't do anything about it, but yeah, that was an outage. For the whole building, yes. Black Hat, the first year we didn't have a problem. Last year we had a problem with the upstream device who wasn't passing the HTTP packets correctly, as I said, and that got fixed. We had another problem because now Black Hat has the whole top floor or the fourth floor of Caesars, and that's a really big place. So it's easily over 100 meters, right? So when you pull cables for your thing, and we pull the cables for the APs, because to use the hotel infrastructure, it's a lot of money. But it got to the point that I had to deploy a PoE switch far away to provide power to the APs that were on the other side. And what happened, I needed connectivity. I didn't want to pull a cable for the switch, so we paid for the hotel to have a port from the NOC to this location where the PoE switch was. And after everything's working, I'm like, okay, good. And I start checking and see, well, connectivity is really not good from the other side, like despite the other problem that we had. And I go check, I see both switches are connected at 10 megabits half duplex. I'm like, this is bad. So finally I check my stuff, I check the PoE switch, everything's configured properly. I go talk to the hotel staff. And he's like, well, yeah, that was like, I don't remember how much it was, like a couple $100. It's like, yeah, it's 10 half, that's how we do it. I'm like, your switch is in the middle, don't support anything else? Is like, yeah, but that's gonna cost you more money. I'm like, dude, that's like, that's not, I want 100 full, like that's standard. He's like, no, that's the standard for all the hotels. The hotels give 10 meg half duplex. I'm like, dude, I have gigabit in my house, you know, my Linksys has gigabit, come on. And he was like, okay, I'll do it. So that helped a lot. So continuing, so we had like going down, like not working totally. I think so. Black Hat probably it was major until we found the real problem, and we were focusing the stuff in our stuff, or we thought was some sort of attack. And of course, you had attacks. You had the lame attacks. You had the people like boating people, Airpony, and after we figured, it was a couple of hours actually. But the good thing was after mainner stock, so people really didn't want to use the network. DEF CON last year, we had a DHCP issue, and turned out to be a port trunking between two different vendors that really wasn't working. But again, you go after the DHCP server. CCC, they ran into limitations of one of either the switch or the switch router or one of the boxes. Their sort of cam table ran out of space for so many ARP entries they had. And they were actually, I forgot to mention, they were using some tool, I don't know if you guys know about it, but it's called ARP Sponge, and to reduce the number of ARP requests in a broadcast in a network. It's really cool. So that was a problem. That took him a couple of hours to fix it. That's pretty much it. Here, I think, yesterday, I broke the network for about 5 minutes. Yeah, it's part of the planning thing. Like I have some IP addressing scheme and everything statically configured, and then we're like, oh, we're going to put your box on another place. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Though I don't need to talk to that VLAN anyways. So, but then it had to talk to the network management people. So I pretty much deleted the IP address on my box, and all the APs went berserk. But I fixed that in a really dirty way, but I won't talk about it. One thing that I want to see, who used the network here, by any chance? Okay. Did you lose, like, thanks, Ken. Did you notice, like, you're connected and suddenly you'd lose IP address and stuff like that, and then it takes a while? It happened to Billy Hoffman during his presentation. Probably he's pissed off at me. Yeah. Who doesn't use Windows that had this problem? You had a problem, Mike? Okay. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what is this. I don't know if is the client freaking out, like changing APs, or like, because usually any wireless problem is related to this, and when you have a high density coverage, usually this is the problem. The client gets confused, but usually it's not that, like losing IP address immediately and then after a while it comes back. What else?
Do you do a lot of logging so that way, like in the next weeks or down the road, you start going back to try and figure out, I had this problem around this time, and this starts showing up, and this is where it was coming from? Or?
So the question was if I usually collect logs during the conference, and then to try to find out what happened later and stuff like that. That's a really great question. Usually I try to. Usually I have a syslog box and to collect stuff just for troubleshooting purposes. Some places like CCC, they do not, they have it. We check the stuff. We run some sort of script to just collect the number of events and stuff like that. they don't let me have the file, for example. Although I help them, I'm the evil vendor. So, which is kind of cool, right? Like even I think they sanitize after they have this huge like 4-day log file. They totally sanitize it. They kill like the IP addresses or the MAC addresses. They totally wipe it out. Although like MAC addresses for me, they don't mean anything because you can change it anytime. But they don't want people to have it, which is kind of cool, like for in a privacy sense of, in a privacy way of thinking. For other stuff, I collected, but usually I never look at it later. I like to have a syslog server just to, if something is happening, I want to see what happened before the problem and to try to help me troubleshoot and get the thing running. Back there.
Hi. Really briefly, if you can indulge me for a short minute or so, I'd like to share a couple of insights that I'm kind of a hanger-on with the group that runs wireless for Nanog and some errand meetings. We've got a couple of insights. I guess everyone can hear me from over here. One is Nomadics boxes. Anyone ever run into those? Pure evil. Okay, these are rated for a certain number of users. It's a hotel captive portal gateway. They're rated for a certain number of users, but they're not rated for a certain number of the kind of abusive users that we have here, who do things like have persistent TCP sessions. So what'll happen is you'll run into something where, geez, you know, I can go to websites, but I can't SSH out. And the reason is that, well, the port 22 bucket is full. And you've got, you know, probably 50, 60 people with 10 SSH sessions open apiece, and there's no more resources. So you're getting throttled by that. Now, the hotels will always tell you, oh, that's okay, you know, we have large conferences here all the time, you know, no problem. Well, you know, they're having large conferences of like orthodontists and stuff. They're not having large conferences of network people. So if you're negotiating with the hotel and you see the Nomadics logo, that's like, you know, danger, step back. Number two is with certain AP vendors like Cisco. It is possible to configure the APs in such a way that horizontal communication between the nodes is prohibited. And when you go further up into your switch, you refuse ARP between the ports and turn on local proxy ARP on your router. At that point, you're in the catbird seat because you're forcing all traffic that goes between nodes on your network to go up all the way, touch the router, and come back down again. Now you can do layer 3 filtering. Now you can say, okay, no more Windows file sharing on my network. Oh, by the way, that rogue DHCP server that you had out there, sorry, it doesn't work because nobody gets the packets for it. Okay, so that solves a whole bunch of problems in one shot. A little bit of lightweight diffserv. I'm not a QoS advocate by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes when big pipes turn into skinny pipes, it helps a little bit. A little bit of diffserv to favor terminal interactive stuff like SSH over stuff like HTTP and particularly torrent. We have sort of a lower number of black hats and a larger number of just plain out and out abusive network users who do stuff because they're used to it. You know, what do you mean I can't run a torrent thing with 150 connections on my laptop? Handles it fine. Lastly, Macs are getting bigger and bigger acceptance. All of the Intel Macs do 802.11a out of the box. You can set up a different network, different SSID for A, and encourage people to use that. That's a good thing. But the caveat here is the chipset in the Mac does not flip back and forth between 5.3 and 5.8 unless it loses the signal altogether. So you want to chase all your APs into either of those bands, whichever you like, but don't count on it going back and forth properly unless it loses the signal completely. So those are 3 small insights that we had.
Thank you. Ken, you want to talk anything about the Nomadics?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to comment on that because I've run into this a lot. And
Okay, hopefully you don't work for them. I didn't
well,
know.
no, I used to work for a company that deployed them, and so it was kind of like a double-edged sword. But basically, like in hotels, you have they're called hospitality gateways.
Yep.
And so their mission is to provide internet access to hotel users at any cost possible. So you can show up in front of a hospitality gateway, and you can be configured for any, as long as you have a IP address, a gateway set, and a DNS server set, it will impersonate whatever you ask for.
Right.
Which is what also causes a lot of problems, because basically you can show up with an IP address of 11111, a DNS server of 22222 and a gateway of 1112, and it'll service you.
It'll do the right thing. Right,
spoof
exactly.
everything that you're looking for, and so that also creates a ton of problems. And we've run into that here, where they have a box like that in the hotel network, and some traffic leaks out onto their network, and it views that traffic as a misconfigured client, so it starts responding and sending all this traffic back, and it's a really nasty thing. So
yeah, I think we're in agreement that ideally what you'd like is you want from your hotel, from your hospitality vendor, you want raw internet access.
Right.
We'll handle all of the minutia.
The flip side to that is, what is the hotel IT staff understanding what that means? And so you have to ask these questions, like, can I get a port that is, outside of the Nomadix box that only has, a router on it or something like that. On the wireless stuff too, I mean, Luis and Terry could also testify to this as well. A lot of the access point vendors now support systems where you have controllers, and so the access points actually using GRE or something else tunnel every single user's traffic up to the controller, and so in addition to blocking inter-client communications, you can actually have inter-client communication, but filter that before it actually gets to people on the same layer too.
Over there?
Just real quickly, I was wondering if you could describe some common attacks and mitigations, maybe ARP spoofing, ARP poisoning, and then maybe other common ones.
Question was the comments of if I had any comments on the most, like, the attacks that people usually do and how to mitigate them. It's really hard, right? Usually there are ways to do that, but again, it's just the example as I gave. We had at one conference, we had this thing that we had the IPS part turned on. If we saw the guy sending X TCP SYNs per second, we would knock that guy off. Not because it doesn't mean the guy maybe is doing a bad thing, but maybe he got owned or something like that, and his machine is sending out crap. So people figure that out, and they're like, oh, I'm going to spoof everybody's IP address just to put that guy on a blacklist. Well, again, that's a mitigation, but like here I decided not to do it. Like you're on your own, pretty much, because it's really, really hard to do that. IP spoofing, though, you can do some stuff to prevent IP spoofing, and if you have a device that can look into like sequence numbers and stuff like that to figure that out, that helps. That's pretty much it. I don't know if it really answers your question, but yes?
I deal with the Nomadix on a daily basis. Evil black magic boo. I hate it because they're awful. It's a silly, silly machine, and the documentation sucks. But the tech support people are very nice. Max, Debbie. Never good if you No, it's not good if they're speed dial number 6. But yeah, and that Nomadix is
Cool. Had a comment, but I forgot. Anybody else? Agent X is ready to talk. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'll be around. Any questions, whatever. Thank you. You know what I do.
No, I really was wondering, but I just wanted to. But yeah, it's funny.
Oh, okay. I wanted to apologize about how
Look, everybody gets like completely snowed in and stuff, so I understand. I just hope that you guys understand that I really wanted to do this, but it's like.
No, I found my laptop actually charged, so I'm okay.
My boss right now, they piss me off at me by dropping my insurance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just wanted to, now that we've actually done it once, it's right. It doesn't look like it.
Actually, I did. I said